So I've kind of been on hiatus for a little bit. Sorry about that, but I'm back for this week. Maybe not next week because I got a lot going on. But one thing I wanted to kind of explain is listening. So everyone talks about, being a good speaker or being a good listener, or being a critical thinker or being able to read things and interpret information. So those are, different skill sets. But I would argue that being able to listen is much more powerful than the other ones. And I'll kind of explain, well, not, powerful in its own way, but I'll try and explain why it's so important and how you actually listen. So this is kind of ironic coming from someone who's talking, but listening is important because you're able to gather a lot of information. And if you have the other background information on how to process that information or background capability to process that information, then when you're bringing in information, you can bring in tons of information and glean all sorts of things, and then make decisions on that, or learn new things, or expand horizons, or process that, regurgitate that, and you're a better speaker for that. But listening actually takes on a lot of forms. It's not just like listening to verbal stuff. It's actually listening to physical cues. It's listening to inflections in the voice. It's looking at body language, and it's also looking at the choice of words and how people say things, how they respond to things. And so it's actually much more interactive than it may seem. So if you ask someone a question, you may be soliciting information from them, but you already may know the answer, and so you're able to interpret their perspective by putting that information in, getting some information back, processing it. Okay, and then when you ask someone something or you're in a conversation, you can see how they respond by their body language, by inflections, like I said, in their voice, or by body language, or by how they respond, or how they even choose their next sentence or their next words, and so forth. And so this all sounds very, very detailed, and it is, but if you become good at it, then it's just a passive type of thing. So it's like poker, right, where you have to read your opponents. But in just listening, these aren't opponents. There's a lot of cooperative situations. They're not all competitive situations. And so what you do is you listen to everything, and you listen, and you watch, and you perceive, and you take in all that information. And by doing that, you become a much better listener, and you become better able to know the metrics around that person or that organization or that entity or whatever. And it works for all sorts of things. So if you listen to a marketing by some company, you're looking at all the details of how they project their message. So really, this listening thing, if you want to boil it down, it's taking in information, and that's really what listening is. And it uses your eyes, it uses your ears, and it actually uses your voice as well by probing with questions to pull out other pieces of information that you can see and that you can hear. So listening is very complex, actually, and there are, what I'm finding, only a handful of people who can do that. And what I'm talking about is a very high level, very sophisticated level of listening, if you will, because it takes in all the information that you can. And if you stop and think about it and break it down, you'll begin to see all the pieces. You just have to be able to interpret them correctly, and that's where the trick is. You can take in all sorts of information by reading things, but you still have to be able to interpret it, and that's where I guess advanced or critical listening would fall into. So something to think about. Maybe you'll watch this video and look at body language, and maybe look at how I say particular things. But people are also equipped with a baseline ability to detect these things, emotional aspects in speeches and things like that, and that actually connects. So there's even deeper subtleties to listening and then how to project that in speaking. So maybe I'll talk about that in some other video. But that's all I got. Have a good week.